All right, folks, welcome back to SPX 2024. I'm Rusty.
I'm Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Hey, wait, who's with us?
Oh, yeah, who's this?
I am Bobby Campbell.
Bobby, welcome.
Bobby, welcome to
Thank
the
you very
interview.
much. I appreciate it.
What
So-
brings you to SPX? Sorry,
Yeah.
Rusty, I didn't mean, no, wait, what were you going to ask?
What I was going to say?
Yeah.
What brings you to SPX?
I'll tell
Oh.
you, can I tell you guys what brings me to SPX?
I'd love to
You
hear
know
it.
what? That'd be great.
Right here we have Tales of Illuminatus #1. And what this is a comic book adaptation of a trilogy of novels from the 70s called the Illuminatus trilogy, written by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. So this is where the Illuminati idea enters popular culture. This is
Interesting.
where it gets picked up by X-Files, by Dan Brown, there was even like a card game that picked it up directly from this.
Wow.
But it was originally meant to be satire. It was originally meant to be silly. It was originally meant
wow.
to be funny. And so it kind of got twisted into something that was more sinister and meant to make people paranoid.
More like a
and-
boogeyman type
Exactly.
situation, yeah.
So it was meant to be, Alan Moore described it as an illuminating game that was meant to undo paranoia, not induce it.
Wow.
So also what's interesting about it is this is where both Alan Moore and Grant Morrison picked up the idea to become magicians. This is where Robert Anton Wilson and the Illuminati trilogy is how you get that version of Alan Moore, that version of Grant Morrison.
Interesting.
And so I got to know Robert Anton Wilson late in his life. I got to study with him, I got to meet him, I got to do artwork for him. And so the opportunity arose to adapt it into the comic book medium. And so, yeah, the idea is that this idea is out there in kind of this ugly form. So what if we could bring it back into something that's a little bit more hopeful,
Yeah.
a little bit brighter?
Give it a different context.
Yes.
Give it a different context, even if it's just a competing context. It doesn't
Right.
have to win. I just
Yeah.
would like it to be an option on the table.
Not just what has been out there. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the first issue. We're rolling through. It'll probably take us 23 issues to get through the whole
wow,
thing. And this is the first try at it, and it's been a lot of fun. That's
awesome.
Yeah, it was a dream project, and it worked. Everything just kind of worked out.
It's especially cool that you have a personal connection, too, from working with Robert Anton Wilson. that
Yeah,
way.
I don't like. I feel like you probably couldn't have gotten away with it if you didn't. I think to a lot of people this is like sacred ground,
Right.
And so you might not just be able to just pick it up and run with it. So like I've worked with his estate for the past 20 years in various capacities, doing artwork in his books and writing intros and just being a part of the community. So I have a lot of support from the people that are super into this stuff.
You're not just a fly-by person.
That's
Right, yeah.
correct. Yeah, yeah. And I have a lot of like people that I can fall back on because it's also, I mean, one of the main influences on it was James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake. There's a lot of like literary games being played, a lot of like when they like his estate copy edits his stuff, they can barely tell if it's a typo or some sort of multilingual pun.
Oh, yes.
So it's like,
Was he being clever, or was he
well,
just
yeah, exactly.
poor penmanship?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where it's like clearly he just misspelled a word,
Yes.
but there's ambiguity.
It's on the
because-
level where you have to be like, was it though? You know?
yeah, but I think so. Like they tend to like lean towards just keeping everything as written.
Makes sense.
And so I'm kind of in there, and I'm changing things from the book to make it into something that works as a comic.
Right.
And it's a delicate operation because people could be like, you can't change stuff.
Sacrilegious, yes.
So luckily, I've earned trust, and I have access to people who can set me straight if I'm like straying too far from the
Nice.
path. And it's been awesome to like work with something that is like pre-exists, and to actually have something that like people are like will see and go, oh, I know that,
Yeah.
as opposed to me having to sell something based just off me, where they go, I don't know who you are, keep walking.
To have that familiarity, yeah, it's automatically draw people in. It's great.
It's like
Yeah.
adapting a known story or property, except it's not necessarily as well as known.
Right, yeah.
And also, it's probably a lot more that needs to be explored with it. That has the potential to be explored.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a little bit best of both worlds. For the most part, most people, it's being introduced introduced as something new, but then there's also a base of people that are like excited for it because they have a pre-existing relationship with it. So it's a little bit lucky on both sides.
I know you have a few other. I'm sorry. What were you gonna?
I was going to say for those existing fans too, like how's the reaction been for that? Because it can be, like you said, they can say sacrilege when you're messing with the source material.
Yeah. So no one has objected to anything yet. So the full issue is just coming out today. So it's serialized on the internet. I'm doing a page a week, and then if you want to jump ahead, you can order the full thing. So what I did was I was smart. I started off making massive changes. So I started off just completely off the reservation, and then actually just settled into a straight adaptation of the novel. So if anyone was going to object, they would have done so at the beginning.
Makes sense.
And so now I've kind of settled into a more straightforward.
Yeah, you can be like, okay, guys, we're cool.
Right, yeah. So like I broke the seal early as opposed to doing it further down the road. So
nice.
So far so good. No one seemed to object it, and people seem just excited to see these ideas in a new form because it's been a while.
Oh, yeah.
What I was going to say is I know you have a couple other comics here as well.
I also, I've been doing this stuff for 20 years, so I have a huge box of back issues and stuff. So this is Weird Comics #2. This is my kind of like the one-man anthology series where just like whatever weird comics I want to make, 3 pages here, 5 pages there. They all just get collected into these anthology series, and it's fun because you don't have to like commit to one idea. It's very hard to commit to one idea for an extended period of time.
Sure.
So
not every idea has long enough legs
for sure. They don't all deserve that much of a thing. So it allows me to treat comics more as communication than as entertainment because it's just these short little snacks. And so, like, if I want to do a short story about some obscure thing that no one's going to care about, it just goes into the anthology book, and it just kind of gives me an excuse to...
There's also no rule that if you dig through it and you find a story and it goes in that later on you can't revisit it.
Right,
There's no problem. This might just be, like, the first initial offering of what this idea is in your head. And then later on, you're like, you know what? Actually,
that kind of works.
Yeah.
So it's like my venue to throw things against the wall. And, if something sticks, that's amazing. If something doesn't stick, at least I scratched that itch.
Sure.
Which a lot of times, that's what it is. I'm just scratching an itch because the idea won't go away until it ends up on paper.
Makes sense.
And so I put it on paper and it goes away. But then, of course, a new one pops in and it's like, now I got a new problem. But
and it's one of those things where, like, the having that short format, even... It's never going to be like super doesn't hit, but it can just be a variation of how well it hits.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought on that. I'm sorry. But
you're tired.
It's only early on Saturday. The thing about it is, like, if you went and you tried to go into like a super long form for something that wasn't necessarily going to hit,
right?
That's when you're like, now I'm locked in.
Right, exactly.
What's the third comic you have here?
So now, so this is what I worked on when I was originally studying with Robert Anton Wilson. So what he wanted to talk about was James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake and Ezra Pound's Cantos. Those were the two things he wanted to talk about. And so he would do these online workshops. And kind of big surprise, not that many people wanted to talk about Finnegan's Wake and the Cantos. But I kind of just dove in. And so this is kind of where those literary influences went. This was the output from the input of studying with him. And so it's kind of like, it's an occult book in the terms, similar to like how Grant Morrison describes the Invisibles as a hyper sigil. It's definitely along those lines where it's not necessarily about the occult in so much as it is an working in the occult. So it's the thing itself rather than about the thing. That's the idea, is that it's a chaotic catalyst for change.
Interesting.
Now, it only operates within my own life, but that's all right. That's the only place it really needs.
All you need.
That's all you need
Exactly,
for,
right? Yeah. And so this is part of a 5-book series that'll eventually get collected into a hardback graphic novel. I'm 4 parts through with 1 left to go.
Wow.
And what's neat about it is it's about 20 years of thinking condensed down into about 230 pages. So when I read it, it's like traveling through time because I get 20 years of my own like study and like condensing of ideas. So it's like the syrup version of the soda,
yeah,
you know?
It's distilled, yes.
Yeah. So I read through, I'm like, whoa. Whether that'll have that effect on anyone else in the entire world, doubtful, but it's been a really fun exercise. People do see, it was very fun. 2 years ago I was here, and a guy came up and he was very interested in this book. And I was like, please take it if you'll read it. Because it's hard to read. It's very dense, it's a challenging read. And he took it, and he came back now, and he said, I read it, and he bought the whole set.
Awesome.
And he was like, I read it, but I read it about 2 pages at a time. Because it's, that's the kind of thing it is. And it's, luckily these days, people are more okay with that kind of thing. Because I originally published this in 2004, and people were less into that kind of thing. Like, you couldn't get away with that kind of, like, I don't know, literary masturbation, I think is what people would have called it, and did call it. But times has changed, and it's kind of more, it functions better now than it did back then, which is kind of fortunate for me, because honestly, now I'm actually...
That's best case scenario.
Yeah. So it's from 2004, but I think it actually plays better today than it did back then.
Now, from what you said about distilling it down and having kind of that time jump for you, where you experienced it over so long, but now you're re-experiencing it. Does that give you a new context for how it was?
Sure. Yeah, and what happens is that like when you load so much information into a book, you can't control all the connections because there's just so much information in there that there are little spider webs of associations that spread out. And so I more read it like I'm a detective. Like so as I'm going to finish it, as you actually go to finish it, I find myself like reading it like I'm solving a mystery. But by all accounts, I created the mystery supposedly.
When you say by all accounts, you have piqued my interest. As far
as I know,
you did not write it.
So in the sense that a lot of it is say found objects.
Sure.
If the objects were ideas.
Interesting. Okay.
I see.
So a lot of it is like it's almost Marshall McLuhan had this idea that if you combine cliches, you get archetypes. So if you take 2 cliches and crash them in together, you get an archetype. And so that's a lot of this stuff is, it's kind of like phrases that anyone could have written. I just got to it first. And so I almost feel more like a secretary.
Interesting.
In the,
it's almost like you're curating the ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. So these are pre-existing cultural ideas that I'm combining into essentially new forms, but forms that probably anyone could have arrived at. I just started working on it early and arrived at some of those ideas maybe before other people put it together. So in the sense, like, sure, I created it, but you're just taking, like, shaving a haircut and combining it with Mary Had a Little Lamb. Anyone could have done it. I happened to do it. But I didn't create those 2 ingredients. So I created it.
So it's almost like you're creating a new dish.
Right.
You're just modifying the recipe, or you're bringing new things together.
Right. Yeah.
This son of a gun put chocolate and peanut butter together.
Exactly. No, right. Someone was the guy that got credit for putting chocolate and peanut butter together.
But he didn't make chocolate or peanut butter.
He didn't make either ingredient.
Yeah, sure.
He just found the combination. And so a lot of times there are unexpected combinations that I'm like, oh wow, like I didn't really create that, but I created that form of it, and now I'm reacting to the parts that I didn't create and trying to like keep the story going towards its conclusion, which is very hard to conclude a story like that because it's meant to be all-encompassing, but everything's changing all the time. So how do you encompass reality without recursion? Because it's, you know what I mean? So it's
where do you choose to make that hard stop?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's kind kind of been the journey. And like I said, I've been working on it for 20 years. It's just been the side project for 20 years. And it's more of a personal thing, but other people sometimes are able to get stuff out of it. So it's like I'm talking to myself in public, and sometimes people are like, you know what, I think that too.
Yeah.
And it just kind of goes from there.
We just mentioned that with someone earlier, where it was like, those are the kind of things that when it's so personal and you're so passionate about it, you just go with it, and then it will find the people.
Yeah.
You may only find one person, but guess what? It's their thing.
Well, that's it. Yeah,
that is
right,
the
exactly.
person for it. Yeah.
Yeah. The target is very small for the niche of people that are into it, but the people that are into it are super into it.
Yes.
And it's almost more satisfying that way.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have fun doing.
Yeah.
And not even would I not have more fun. I just couldn't do it. I'm just not. I've had.
Because you have to pour so much effort.
Yes.
Right.
And if it doesn't resonate the same way to you, how do you continue to pour all of that work into something?
Yeah, you just can't. You just can't. Because everything is, like, if you don't commit to it fully, it's just not going to happen.
No. And you used a perfect example with the one guy that, you were like, if you promise you're going to read this.
Right,
yeah.
And then 2 years later, he comes back, and it hit.
What's
That's
cool
amazing.
is that he actually read it.
I know.
It's like, even under the best of circumstances, we all have things we got
just
for
haven't.
sure,
not
for
read.
sure. Like today, I'm going to go around, and I'm going to buy a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know that I'm going to get to it all. I never do.
It's
It ends
time.
up
You mean to? You
Yes.
want to?
I would love to.
Best
I would
intentions.
love to, but yeah.
And that this guy was like, you know what? I made this promise.
Yep.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. Like, if you do things for long enough, over a long enough timeline, you start to get little hits on your very unlikely plays. Like, everyone told me, stop writing like this. Don't write your comics like this. No one can understand them. But when you do find someone that can, it's more gratifying than...
It's not nobody.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yep.
Maybe only a handful, but it's not nobody.
It's so more gratifying than like 20 people just like surface appreciating something.
Correct. Yeah. And also, like, I tend to think of comic making like as communication as opposed to entertainment, because I did the freelance thing for a while. It's no fun. I don't like trying to make money off of it. I don't like trying to make a living off of it, because you can't say no to stuff. You end up working on things that you're not super passionate about. So I found a good balance. I'm a high school teacher.
Yeah.
I'm home by 3:30. I get the summers off. I can make my weird little comics that make sense to not no one, but almost no one.
Yeah.
And I scratch the itch, and the process keeps going. And it's really it worked out, but in such a different way than I ever would have expected.
Bob, your work seeks to answer so many questions. I must ask you, would you like to answer a mystery question?
I would love to.
Fantastic.
Let's bring in the mystery machine of mystery questions. And for this, we need the big
That's right.
quarter truck. Make sure there's a quarter fell out. There's no quarters in the quarter truck. Quarter truck, what are you doing?
You are slacking.
You're breaking the fourth wall, quarter truck.
All right.
This is awesome.
There we go.
Thank you.
There you go. All right.
Rusty. We just went over this. You almost headbutted the machine.
Almost died. Very
Bob,
exciting.
What is your mystery question?
It is, what's your stance on rain? I am very pro rain. I grew up, like, rain meant something that you had to do was getting canceled. And there is nothing better than canceled plans. There is, I just absolutely...
The relief.
Even if it's something I want to do. I love canceled plans. I used to work at a golf course. And so when it rained, no work that day.
Oh, nice.
Or no baseball practice. Or I used to be a land surveyor, like the guys with the tripods around the construction sites. And when it would rain, they would just be like, don't worry about it. Don't come in today. And so, even now that rain does not get me out of anything, I just love it. I know someone's getting out of something somewhere, and I
There's so
think
many
that's a
positive
beautiful
associations.
thing.
Like,
Yeah.
What a generous perspective.
That's really nice, yes.
You know what? I know that rain's helping some folks out
someone's
there.
out there be like, I don't got to go to baseball practice today.
This rain ain't for me, but it's for somebody, guys. It's all right.
Exactly.
Where can people find out more about your work online?
Weirdoverse.com is the home base, and then talesofilluminatus.com. Every Thursday at 8:08 a.m. in the morning, a new page goes up, and the thing grows. And we've got such a long back catalog that it's going to be years before you don't go to talesofilluminatus.com on Thursday morning and there's not something new for you.
Wow.
Unless it's 8:07.
Yeah, if it's 8:07, you want to know the secret? I put it up at night.
What?
Nice.
What?
Yeah, you can look early. You can look early.
Oh my God, that is something out of the Illuminati.
I shouldn't have said that, but yeah.
Little behind the scenes secret there.
Something we've started this year. We've been doing this for a while now, these interviews at SPX. Something new we've started this year. What is it, Rusty?
So we have a new prize gallery.
Prize gallery?
We'd like to offer you a prize.
A gallery of prizes that all are adorned with our
Bunch of
wonderful
nonsense
visages.
with our faces on it.
Now
this
here,
is great.
I'm going to do it again. Let's do it. We have a deck of playing cards. We have a set of 4 coasters. We have a camping mug. We have a pot holder. We have a puzzle. We have a placemat, a tea towel, a blanket that is far
This is
too
awesome.
big to unfurl. We have a keepsake box in which you can keep.
Oh, your sakes.
Keep your sakes, that's right, Rusty. We have a traditional ceramic mug, we have a pillow, and we have a shopping bag. Bob, what would you like?
I gotta go that camping.
Camping
Nice.
mug. I will put
That's
it
a cool
in.
mug.
Here it is, Russ. That's the last camping mug.
Whoa, it's
We've
popular.
been wiped out of
That
the
is a
camping
beauty.
mug.
Guys, this
mug.
is awesome.
Well, thank you so much for sitting with
Yes,
us.
I do have it.
great.
Can I give these to you? Can
Oh,
you?
we would
You
love
know
that.
what? I'm
Yes.
not gonna say no.
Absolutely.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks
This
for
is
sitting with
delightful.
us.
And you know what? I must say, good production quality on these too. I like that
Oh,
matte
thank you.
finish.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You didn't have to say that.
No, but you know,
I mean, you said I must say.
I felt the need to.
Wow.
When a book is nice, I
It stirred
appreciate
within you and it had to
Yeah.
come out.
I will. I think people have gotten away from flat colors on cheap textured paper at their own peril.
Yeah, honestly.
I think I prefer flat colors on a textured paper.
Yep.
It takes you less time to do it. You don't have to charge me as
yeah.
much, and I think that's how people should do things more often.
I see things that are like over-rendered
Yeah,
on
yeah.
glossy paper, and it's just like,
Well, everybody, they gravitate towards the new thing and forget that there's other ways.
Yeah,
Yes.
Because
yeah.
it's wonderful to have that as a tool in your toolbox.
No,
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
But there's nothing wrong with a more or less detailed,
For
less
sure.
ornate style.
You don't have to render the bridge of the nose. It's okay.
How
you
will
can
you
just
know
do a
it's
line.
there?
You
understand
can just do a
noses.
line.
Yeah.
It's all right.
But my nose has to have it. They said, no, you can't just have a line. You have to have the full nose, whatever.
What really drives me crazy, I don't mean to go over.
No,
Oh, no, you're good.
What you got?
When they take classic art and color underneath of it with them, drives
detest
me
it.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like you can't take John Buscema and re-render
Oh.
underneath his line work. Stop doing that.
There was
for
nothing
something that
wrong
was
with
never intended for that.
Yeah, no.
no.
It wasn't drawn with that in mind.
They make the artwork look worse because you have an intern re-rendering the forms of masters, like guys who like are so good, and you're making them look worse by re-rendering underneath their line work.
Jose Villarrubia is an awesome colorist. He was the colorist on Promethea for Alan
okay,
Moore.
yeah.
And he posts on like Facebook and some of the stuff, and he does these posts called From a Colorist Perspective.
Yeah.
And he basically calls that out all the time.
Yeah,
and he's
it's
just
brutal
like,
sometimes.
this was not what this was intended to be. This is how it should naturally look. Like, no, don't ruin
Like, yeah,
things.
the line that's there will tell you everything you need to know
Yeah.
about that shape.
Yep.
You do not need to put shadow everywhere around it. And if you're like, there's people that are amazing at it and should be
Oh,
doing
yeah.
it that way these days, but to retroactively
No,
undo
yeah,
their
if you're
line
planning
work.
for it when you do the art,
Yeah,
great. but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're like working with Frank Whiteley and he's giving you the pencils and you're rendering the thing, that's completely different
Yes.
than just taking something that exists, the guy's not around anymore,
Yeah.
and just like re-rendering the face. So it's a pet
Perfect.
peeve, and I any opportunity to throw that out there.
Honestly, yeah, it's like, for the folks at home, just so you know.
They're also paying someone to do it.
Oh, that's, yeah.
To
make it worse.
more money
Yeah.
to make it worse. So like, save yourself the trouble on both ends of the equation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And don't do that.
Take a step back. Not everything needs to be modified.
Yeah.
So, lesson learned for everyone. There you go.
Hopefully, lesson learned.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I think we settled it pretty definitively.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that should.
And if not,
That's the end of
well,
this,
we
end
can
of the
always
discussion,
return
guys.
to
That's
this.
it.
Well, again, thank you for sitting with us.
Yes,
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for
This is
having me.
awesome.
Have a great time at the show.
What's that?
So have a great time at the show.
I sure
Yes.
will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Great to meet you.
Boom. Put it in there, us.
Thanks. Oh,
Get
yeah.
it.
There we
Bah!
go. Yes.
Power shake.